Brad West, and this is The Red Web. Of course, I'm being joined by Miss Anastasia Anderson and Greg Burrow on loan from Dragons Are Comics and Fantasy, where we are talking this week about the comic book history ages.
Yes.
If you were here for our previous episodes, you saw we were talking about the Golden Age, which was roughly from the inception of superhero comic books in general, all the way up into the end of the Depression, World War II, and McCarthyism and the seduction of the innocents. If you're into any kind of comic book history at all, make sure you read up on the Comics Code Authority. We talk about it a lot.
Yes.
We talked about the Silver Age, the reinvention of DC Comics, and the creation of Marvel Comics, as well as a change in productions and distribution, and new characters, new ideas, and new media, movie and TV. We also went into the Bronze Age. The Bronze Age is where Marvel Comics really finds its footing and starts moving away from the Comics Code Authority, and DC Comics starts deciding to take advantage of all of their various intellectual properties that they had been hoarding over the years, starting with the suit of Fawcett Comics and their version of Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, and going up until the Shazam television show.
Yes.
Which all leads to the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So today we're going to be talking about the modern age, which is, now as I mentioned before, there's a lot of inconsistency on who agrees with what to really be the beginning of the different ages or the ending of the different ages. The one that they actually all really do agree on is 1985. That's the clear cut between all of the old comic books and the new comic books. That's where we would change. Everything changes. Everything.
Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Crisis on Infinite Earths. This is a change in the stories, mostly because DC Comics, for the first time, reboots their continuity. They cross over every one of their different versions of the superheroes, from the Silver Age Justice League of America to the Golden Age Justice Society of America to the alternate reality where Shazam, aka Captain Marvel, lives, to some of the other comic books that they had, are Police Comics, which had Plastic Man, and Carlton Comics, which had Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle. All of these different things, they decided that they were going to mush them together in one continuity. Whereas previously in the Silver and Bronze Age, the Golden Age and Silver Age Flash were from different worlds, where Barry Allen was the Flash of his universe and Jay Garrick was the Flash of his universe. The main difference in Crisis on Infinite Earths is when all was said and done and all of the different Earths collapsed in on themselves, the other end of it, we get one single continuity. And it's also the first time we really have retcons.
Yeah.
We made the distinction between, like, the reboots of older times and now. It's like the reboots of older times were, we passed the mantle on, it's a different character. And this one, it's a combination of that. Plus, it's the same character, we just tried again.
Yeah. So,
and also I want to point out that this is really when independent comics really comes to the fore.
Yes.
There's several that have been around before this, but this is when comic books really start getting big as far as independent comics. Kamiko is out there, First Comics is out there.
And a lot of this has to do with our other major influence. Not only is there a change in narrative and publishing styles, there is a change in distribution. And just like at the end of the Golden Age, when there was a change in distribution, lack of materials, etc., the Bronze Age leads into the Modern Age because we now have the direct market.
Yeah.
And the direct market is a huge change in everything comic books.
Yes.
But not just content, but also the money that they can make off of it. It gives other people a seat at the table.
Yeah. Yes, because they have it, and I pointed this out before. By the time we get to 1985, and especially with Crisis on Infinite Earths, we have three distinct sets of audiences that we now have to address. When they did the retcon, you have the older people who loved the older stuff, who preferred the older stuff. You have the newer people who are working on trying to catch up with all of this stuff. Like, I mean, you saw how long ago this was. You have to catch up with a good half a decade worth of comics. And then you have the people in the middle who are trying to memorialize those memories. And it's like, and from about then to the 90s, that's when we get really collectors heavy. Mm-hmm. So this new distribution system is a way that appeals to all of those audiences, because you can grab things to collect directly at the comic shop. You know, you can figure out exactly what stories to get, and they're all sitting in one place. You don't have to figure out where everything is. And then whatever else is left, like, you still have a place to go find your new stuff. Yeah.
Well, also, I think that, you know, comics were affordable for anyone to buy, really.
Yes.
In the Bronze Age and maybe the first part of the Modern Age. I mean, like, I got a full before I would say by '84, I had a full run of Amazing Spider-Man, except for Amazing Fantasy 15. I never saw a copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 until I was an adult. But I was able to go to my comic book store and buy like a couple issues of Spider-Man, like a back issues for like $1 each issue and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was able to slowly build up my entire run of Amazing Spider-Man. I had the entire run of Peter Parker. I had the entire run of Webb, because Webb started in the 80s.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had a full run of Marvel Team Up, because they all had Spider-Man in it. So I was able to get all these comics. I had a very good collection, and I was a kid. This is just off of my allowance, which was, maybe $10. It wasn't like I had a lot of money. And I was able to slowly build up and get an entire comic book collection.
Right.
One of the reasons why I feel sorry for kids now is like just staying up with how much comics cost today. I don't see how a kid off an allowance
can
get more than one or two comics, because I mean, it's like some of these issues are $9 all by themselves.
Well, and it's a hard combination, because it's like I've told them, in my case, my struggle was, especially doing shows like this, I would not only have to figure out what's going on right now, which would cost a good handful of money. Like, I think Dark Detective was like $5.99 an issue. So I had to spend a good $20, $30 on comics, and then also be like, oh, well, on top of this, I want to learn about this specific age. And we are talking, those issues can go, your two options were to either find individual issues, which things went back to like $125 an issue, or you buy the trade paperback for like $45, which is fine for me now, but as a child I would have been like, oh, sweet
Well,
Jesus.
Just like with so much of the other things that we talk about on this show, there's the good and the bad. Well, and whereas 85 was the beginning of the modern age, it was also the beginning of something else. There's actually this like there's this little magical section between the mid 80s to the early 90s, where you have this speculation boom. You have DC rebooting their comic books. There's still an overlap from traditional media distribution, so you're still getting comic books in gas stations and at magazine racks and stuff too at the same time. It's not solely a direct market. Direct market is just something in addition. So direct market, also, like you said, a lot of the comic book shops started having the back issues. So they were being able to take advantage of older comic books to sell newer comic books. And this changed not only, like you said, the value of the comic books, the collectability of them as well. Because now you have all these new comic books, and you have people who are newly interested in stuff, and they still have access to some of this other stuff. Well, that's what kind of kicked off the speculation boom, and people started thinking, well, there was much demand, huge demand, not only for new comic books, for old comic books too. Mm-hmm. Which is good up until we get to the 90s, when all of a sudden we're having everybody flooding the market. We have multiple covers, we have new comic book companies, we have the creation of Image Comics, which was an artist-run company, which is breaking away from the traditional model of the work for hire. that was done for comic books, where all of the intellectual property created belonged to the media mogul, whereas, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and the others, they decided they wanted to have creative freedom, so creative control change. And because the direct market existed, they were given that opportunity because they had a cheaper distribution. They don't have to worry about filling newsstands and stuff like that,
Right.
and things like of that nature. So that's a huge step
Yeah.
Right.
in the
Well,
comic book world.
and from a perspective of someone who enjoys pop culture and enjoys toys, from 1985 into the 90s, we were on a weird collector's kick. And it's like we had to create a split between the people who were buying comic books to collect them for the value to resell them, and for the people who
You
were
just love the characters.
who wanted to just read it. Like, I've told people, I read these things. So it's like it's like that was also when they started popping up with like very silly variant covers, like the one they were talking about with the 50 states.
Oh, that was like 5 years ago.
It's
Avengers.
basically those kind of things are directly appealing to those people who collect just to collect, save, and then turn around and resell them.
Well, also there was lenticular covers, there was lithographic
holographic covers.
Yeah.
There was
You can get
foil
all
embossed
cool
covers.
stuff.
There were die cut covers. There was okay. You know what though? I really did love that Lobo Superman create your own cover. I still play with that one. I still take that one out of the bag. It literally, the cover was wax coated and it came in color forms.
Oh.
And it came with a sheet of color form. So you had like, the cover was just like, the backdrop was Metropolis, and you had like Lobo and Superman and his motorcycle and things and different, and you put stickers on the cover to make whatever you wanted it to be.
Oh, that's cute though.
It was cool out of color form. I love that one. Okay, but some of them were creative, but at the same time, that's the 90s. Backing up just a little bit, you made an amazing point when you were talking about just like other media. In the Bronze Age, really helped to kick off how that was going. Another big thing about the 80s was action figures and toys, and we all love to talk about those on this show because there's a reason why comic book geeks and toy geeks overlap so much.
It's just a giant circle.
It's because of the modern age. When you started having Mattel creating their own superheroes in the form of He-Man, and you also had G.I. Joe in the comic books and tie-ins, and it occurred to the license holders of these other properties are like, well, everybody knows Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman. Let's cash in on this. 85 not only was the Crisis on Infinite Earths, but it was also the beginning of the Superpowers collection, which is a very important toy line because it was the first time DC, by merging their universe into one universe, was the first time they had a clear design idea for their, not just a narrative overview of their universe, but a visual overview of their universe. And they created a model board for characters, and this model board was used to launch not only they updated the Super Friends cartoon and made it the Superpowers cartoon, and they're as a tie-in, very much like G.I. Joe to sell them, but also their products, merchandising, T-shirts, apparel, all kinds of stuff. It was really the first time they had to push for a unified look and feel to the entirety of the DC Comics universe. George Perez did a bunch of designs for them.
Then, of course, we phase into the 90s with the renaissance, I consider, of the cartoon form with Batman the Animated Series.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Bruce Timm...
toys were a big push in the modern age, creating that crossover. The Ninja Turtles Playmates put that company on the map.
Yeah.
Really interesting thing now is by the time we get to the beginning of the modern age, Marvel Comics has already overextended itself. They have really started to lose control of so many. They lost control of their licensed characters and properties. They were no longer producing Conan. They were no longer producing the Micronauts and any of their other toy lines. They were losing money on that. And they were having a hard time getting any kind of animation products, and they were starting to have to file for bankruptcy. Then, major toy connection here. Avi Arad, a Middle Eastern businessman who owned a toy company, named Toy Biz had very cheaply licensed the Marvel Comics characters for his toys. Well, this coincided with the beginning of the 90s with the creation of the X-Men animated series and Spider-Man animated series. Avi Arad, basically, he was the first to go, okay, we're going to go all in and push every Marvel property we can to make as many toys as we can. He even was famously irritated the writers of the Spider-Man animated series. He insisted a new character be introduced in every episode so that they can get the world aware of these things. So Avi Arad actually made enough money from Toy Biz to turn around and buy Marvel out of bankruptcy. After Marvel reconstructed, Avi Arad became the chief executive officer of Marvel Comics, and he's kind of one of the ones responsible for licensing. He created Marvel Studios, which started licensing out the rights to movies. This is how Spider-Man ended up at Sony, Fox ended up with X-Men, etc., etc. But doing all that managed to save them as a company, and it was all because of the animated series and the ties-ins with the toys, which all brought back the attention to the speculation boom of the new comic books. So, yeah, modern age from 85 to mid-90s was a huge surge of everything. Media, toys, etc. It was the biggest proliferation of superheroes into the public consciousness that you'd ever had, actually.
Right. And actually, I'm going to ask on film because I didn't realize this one would get so meaty. Do you guys want to do another part on this to talk about the 2000s with the Marvel movies?
Well, you know what? Let's do that. So we're going to wrap up the modern age, and we're going to come back to a postmodern age. Because I almost said this a minute ago, because when we talk a lot about the dark ages of comics in the 90s and how the speculation bubble expanded and then collapsed in on itself.
Right.
And there's actually several companies that imploded, unfortunately, that were really brilliant companies. Like right here in Austin, there was a comic company called Blackbird Press that created a comic book called Heroes, which was absolutely amazing. And unfortunately, it was one of the casualties of the
speculation fall.
Right.
So
It's like, but you guys deserve to hear us talking about the modern resurgence, the early 2000s resurgence.
So you guys take care. Check us out for the next episode.
And we're going to talk about postmodern comics.
Woo!